This is Floss Weekly, episode 770, recorded Wednesday, February 14th. 10% more internet. Hey, this week, Doc Searls joins me and we talk with David Tott about the state of the internet, IPv4 exhaustion, 10% more IP addresses that are just sitting there waiting to be used, and more. You don't want to miss it, so stay tuned. Hey, welcome. It is Wednesday. It is time for Floss Weekly. That's free Libre and open source software. It's not just me. I've got Doc Searls with me, and we've got a pretty special guest. We've got David Tott with us. This is going to be a little different. It's more like a meeting of the minds than a full-on interview, and that's mainly because everybody in the audience, I think, knows David Tott by now. He's the buffer bloat guy. He's the big internet guy. But I think we have something a little different we're going to talk about today. Both Doc and David, welcome to the show.
Both of us are actually named David, Doc. So
great.
Mind if I call you? Yeah.
I know. That's why
good
you
to
go
be
by David
here.
and I go by Doc. And I mean, the year I was born, the two most common names were Michael and David, and I got called Doc because I started a business with somebody else named David. He was very possessive of it, and I found out years later when I saw his driver's license that his first name was Paul. So, names are weird. And you went by another name when I met you too, which I would. Yeah, the most common name. You went to the second most common name.
Well, back then my name was Mike Tott was number one on Google for like 10 pages in, and I tried to retire. I didn't want to fix computers anymore, and I changed my name to Dave to become a surfer musician dude, and didn't last.
How did that work out for you?
Here I am again. I hear Sting isn't using his name much. Maybe I'll try that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's also my hope we end up with a mystery guest today. I tried to get him on the show, but he's late to arrive.
And I know there's sort of a legal issue that maybe is why he decided not to be here. Let's go ahead and dive into that. David, why don't you set the stage? What's the deal? What's the deal with the internet and IPv4 addresses, to be precise?
That's a really big question.
Like a drug or fire.
I kind of realized as I said that's way too big of a question for one episode. So we'll narrow it in a little bit and talk about IPv4.
Okay. So it's really remarkable. Fairly recently, I went around and I polled normal human beings, and I asked them, do you know what a packet is? And I went 0 for 30.
Yeah.
So by some miracle, people click on things and it comes here, but they've never really thought about it. Most of those people knew what an atom was. It was like over 50% knew what an atom, and I tried to explain that an atom. But if people don't know what an atom is, what's a packet? And then you get into the fact that all packets need to have a home address and a destination address. Mm-hmm. And when we first laid out the internet back in the good old days, we thought 32 bits was enough. 4 billion addresses. We had a couple hundred computers in the world in the first place, so what the heck? Why would you need 4 billion addresses? And Vint Cerf is sometimes called IPv4, the experiment that escaped the lab.
Yeah.
And we realized that we were going to run out of addresses in about 1992, 93. And started drafting up a new standard called IPv6, which again, you explain to someone that doesn't know what a packet is or an atom, and then you talk about IPv4 versus IPv6. You've already fallen off a cliff. You cannot have a rational discussion anymore. And this includes multiple people in government. I was talking to a certain 3-letter agency, not the NSA, with 2 intern lawyers that are supposed to be doing legislation. They had no idea what a packet was either. Anyway, so we screwed up in not visualizing how big the internet would get. And after a lot of reorganization and struggle, we invented a new technology called NAT, which is how most of us are talking today, which allows you to multiplex your home address on top of one of those 4 billion addresses to get to the internet.
You hide multiple machines behind the one address.
And you use DHCP to assign an address, right? So this machine has an address and the printer has an address in your house, but it's not on the internet.
Yeah. Well, it would be cool to find out if you guys have IPv6 yet, but you're nerds. You might actually have it, but you probably didn't know you had it.
I've tried. I've tried to get IPv6, and my ISP doesn't support it yet.
How about you? You
I
type
don't know
in
if does Comcast
ifconfig.
support it, because I'm talking to Comcast right now.
Yes.
Fiber, they do. What can I look at to see? I mean, is it a?
You bring up a terminal window and you type in ifconfig, and you look for a big number separated by colons.
Command not found. So fconfig and
ifconfig.
oh, ifconfig. That's I've used this so many times.
Well,
I thought there was something else that I didn't. Okay.
the majority of our audience probably hasn't. Well, this
Okay.
audience maybe.
All right. So I know I've got EN, which are the
EN0 is probably your device name.
okay.
You should have something that begins with a
That's
2.
EN21. There's so many.
Has
It's a very long
hexadecimal.
list of them, longer than I'm used to. I haven't
Cool.
looked at this in years. So EN45, app0.
One of the challenges that you'll get to, though, is most machines, depending upon your router, will have IPv6 addresses. They're just not routable IPv6 addresses.
Yeah, they don't work. But anyway, Doc, you are most likely using IPv6 every day, and until this moment, you didn't know.
No, I didn't know. Yeah. I tell you, here's what I know about IPv6. It's coming. That's the whole thing. That's the whole thing.
It's one of those technologies. It's one of those technologies like fusion that's always been 5 years out.
I know.
Like nuclear
it
power.
approaches asymptotically. It's always halfway here.
Yes.
Yeah. So for the audience, the tool I use to see how well it's working is called IPv4, and that will test to see if you put that in your browser as a plugin. It'll tell you what kind of connections you're actually using. So IPv4. Anyway, we're a little off track. Doc, you're using IPv6, but because you're using IPv6, you can't talk directly to this gentleman over here because he's only on IPv4. So in order for you two guys to talk, both of you have had to have an address that you both knew running over IPv4 for this conversation to be taking place just between the two of you. Okay. Jonathan, are you hosting the server here in the cloud?
It is cloud hosted, yeah.
Yeah. So there's a fourth party involved that doesn't necessarily need to be there. That's actually multiplexing your IPv6 to his IPv4 and my IPv6, mixing it together for video, and bang, you've got a working network connection. And all that machinery is mostly invisible to you.
Right.
But the original conception of the internet would be that for a call between me and you directly, I would connect between me and you directly with no intermediaries involved at all. And it would be lower latency, better security, and so on. And we've gotten quite far away from that in the last 30 years.
Yeah, I think if possible, the way this platform works is it will eventually connect the streams directly, but it's got to do all sorts of, it's got to hop through things like NAT traversal, and it's a lot. Because of the way things are put together now, it is a lot of work to be able to make those connect directly. We're using Video Ninja, and I'm pretty sure it does manage the trick most of the time. But it's a bit of magic on top of magic to be able to make that work.
Yeah, well, it's pretty good magic, but it could be less crazy. There's a couple really cool peer-to-peer VPNs. Did you guys ever have Avery on here for Tailscale? He's great.
I think we may have once.
I think so.
Yeah. So Tailscale and Zero Tier are peer-to-peer VPNs that make all that magic just so you can connect two machines together more or less directly. It wasn't the design goal was to make that be easy, and it isn't. Anyway, so I'm going to try to get back to the history of the internet. So we had
Avery Penneran. We definitely had him on.
Yeah.
There you go.
Avery's great. He's a funny guy. And I
really
love,
good.
And I really said, product pitch. We use Tailscale all the time around here. It makes you finding a device anywhere. If you left it in your closet, it's still there. No matter where you go. So that was the internet that we were trying to build, where you could talk to anything all the time. Anyway, we got away from, we added all this extra machinery, but we saw it coming that we needed to have more addresses in 1992. And we got together and said, we evaluated a bunch of possibilities. Let's make them be 128 bits. We should be able to cover the universe with the internet if we do that. And 1997 rolled around and people started deploying. There's huge investments into it. We managed to get into Linux by, no, I don't know, 2000. There was a huge project in Japan, and we all thought that the next big thing that would happen was that we would just abandon ancient decrepit IPv4 and go to IPv6. It's 27 years later. And IPv6 is at a little over 45% penetration to the Googles of the world. There are whole countries that have no IPv6, and there are some countries that are almost entirely IPv6 now. But the idea of a common communication substrate has been in flux for this entire time. So, and we ran out. We ran out of IPv4 addresses back in 2010, basically. And the price, and the commercial market started, the price keeps going up. So if you as a business or as a person want your own IP address where you can put your own servers, you got to buy it or you got to rent it. And that kind of gets us to where there's this big controversy happening today, happening in the past few weeks. So historically, IP addresses were given away to anyone that asked. And then this secondary market started up due to the scarcity, which is, by the way, I'm afraid of it. It's effectively reallocating scarce resources to the highest bidder. And it's not that much money, $30 a piece. But we're still out and we're still adding devices. So those prices seem inevitably to go up over time unless IPv6 replaces it. And recently, Amazon announced in their cloud they were going to start charging for an IP address. So you as a business have to pay them rent on these IP addresses. And the estimates are that they will be earning an extra $1 billion a year on the artificial scarcity of the IPv4 address space.
Now, let's ask something here, because I think this will tie into where you're going. What do you mean by artificial scarcity? Why is it artificial?
Well, that's pretty premature for my discussion here.
Okay, so we'll take that idea and we'll put it in the corners of our head, and
You're going
you can
somewhere
keep going.
here, so okay.
If we'd all gotten together and agreed in a room, in 1997 that we were going to go full tilt IPv6, this would not be happening. And if we were still working together hard with a common agreement that we should make IPv6 work everywhere, then this wouldn't be happening. And pretty much everyone in the internet community agrees that IPv6 is the way forward. Everybody should upgrade. You first. No, you first. No, you. How about you? No, and it's just taking a really, really long time. And we have all these legacy gear, 2G, 3G, 4G. It's all gear that cannot be upgraded to IPv6. There's whole countries that have made billion and trillion dollar investment in infrastructure that cannot be upgraded to IPv6. So
for example, that's like the data in your phone. Okay, your data connection on your phone is IPv4 by no.
In our country and because of the late phase of phones, most phones are the ones doing IPv6 better than anything else.
Yeah.
Okay.
In part because the cellular carriers couldn't get any IPv4 for it.
Oh, I see. Okay. So, but there's still lots and lots of sunk cost in legacy computers of all kinds that haven't changed. Your Windows-based ATM machine.
Windows 95 and
your Windows 95 based ATM machine at your Sirius bank.
I wish you were joking.
I know. When you see the error screen there, think, wait a minute, that's Windows 95 or 98 or something. Yeah.
I will say that it's just as bad when it's a Linux machine running a 2.6 kernel, which you also will see out in the wild.
I have seen this on airplanes. When the most of the screens on your airplanes that are in the back of a chair are are Linux, and when they fail, you see the little
Tux. You see
little
Tux slide by.
like 2.6 or something. There we are.
Oh,
Here's a story you don't possibly know. A great deal of those airline seat backs were my fault. We did that work. Running X windows on these little things for a couple airlines back in the early 2000s. So I had actually campaigned that we change the Tux logo to something else, and they didn't. It would have been cool branding for the company at the time.
yeah.
Anyway, most of those are replaced now. I have another rant on this show. Isn't it great that you have Wi-Fi on all the airplanes now?
Yeah.
When was the last time you had a good conversation with your immediate neighbor?
Yeah, I know that's another thing. Well, everybody's looking at their rectangle because now they've taken them. They no longer have them. The newer planes, they don't even have a thing. On some of the United planes, there's a clamp, and you pull it really wide for your pad, and it's narrow for your phone. That's on the back of the seat in front of you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's hilarious.
I spent a plane flight recently sitting next to a young lady working on VR for Meta. And she was clicking and texting and typing and interacting with more people as fast as thumbs I've ever seen. She must have had 300 or 400 simultaneous conversations go over the entire airplane flight.
Yep.
And I finally got a chance to get a few words in edgewise asking her what she did. And she told me about that. And then I asked her what a packet was. And she didn't know.
No, she had some in her purse. I mean, you need a Splenda. I've got a couple of those.
Goodness.
Anyway, so I'm going to keep trying to unwind my story for connectivity, the deconnectivity story. So everybody producing a service in the cloud needs an IPv4 address. They're getting increasingly scarce. They're costing more money. Mm-hmm. And if you're an ISP or a new ISP or a new provider and you can't get any IP addresses at all, you're out of business. You can't even start your business. Mm-hmm. So as the scarcity gets worse, innovation is already in the decline. The ability to expand the internet to more people is in decline unless you accept only IPv6. And we all do have to work together somehow to make sure it deploys. And I've been working for years. You talk about Linux 2.6. There are people still shipping Linux 2.6 into devices, home routers in the home,
Sure.
Because it's good enough. And it isn't. And they're not able to enable the engineering resources to go do that. And there's no standards body or government or anyone saying, stop doing that. Give me a modern Linux. There's no cluebat coming out through the internet saying, don't do this anymore. You're holding everything back. And it's been I've been kind of working a background. This is another segue. Oh well. Have you heard of BEAD?
Not necessarily.
No.
No? The NTIA.
I've seen beads, but
The broadband program at the NTIA put together at the beginning of COVID.
Okay.
They threw $70 billion at the states and said, hey, go make broadband work for everybody. Get back to us when you're done. Okay. And after a lot of legal rigmarole, the money was distributed to the states, and they're trying to go and subsidize and build out better internet for everyone, mostly fiber. And your city, by the way, should get that. It's a good plan, especially because they gave it to all the states to figure out how to spend it best. Because I had zero hope the federal government could figure out how to spend it best. So. Anyway, so as part of the BEAD program, I was going up to all the people going out and getting billions of dollars, and I'm saying, so what's a packet? And how are you going to get enough addresses to add internet to all these new people for it? And they don't know either. They didn't even know it was a question. You just plug in the wire, right? You got internet. Yeah, okay. And I'm hoping that the educational level at the states does continue to get better as to what kind of demands they need, not just for addressing an IPv6, but security, training, and so on. So we'll see a lot of good stuff coming up about that. The other program is called Internet for All by the Biden administration, and I don't know, go call up your state, all of you on this show, call up the state broadband office, looking for that, and explain to them that Linux and open source software can save them money, provide better security.
Is there such a thing as a state broadband office? I mean, in every state, is this like a...
Yeah, they were all set up as part of this program. There is a place to call.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. I would like very much for the open source community to be jumping in to say, oh, you can reflash your old routers to OpenWRT. This is how you build out a Wi-Fi router correctly and do it in your home. And by the way, use wires. Wi-Fi can really suck. But honestly, if we as a community could reach out to the government in these cases, we should possibly get a better internet out of it. So, big pieces
Indiana
of advice.
has something. There it is, Indiana Broadband.
Yeah, so who's your local
That's it.
representative for this?
I don't know, but we're getting fiber anyway, so...
It may well be subsidized by this program.
Yeah, I know.
But there'll be out-of-IP addresses.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, our section of town is planned, so, but there's a public-private thing that's going on here. In addition to the private thing that was already here and told me I had fiber until we got here, and they said, no, you don't have it in your neighborhood. And then I got Comcast, so.
Thanks, guys.
Well,
it's a real thing.
That's a real thing too. Also, as part of this program, everyone got together and provided much better broadband maps.
And it's called BEAD. There's a thing called BEAD. Look at that.
Yeah.
Look at that.
Who are you gonna call?
Yeah. Apparently, they
Bead Busters.
Internet for all.
Yeah, but seriously, I honestly, if more of us got involved in this new rollout and provided some technical advice and stuff, it'll be a lot better for everybody. And the reason why you don't have fiber is the map sucked. And they have done a great job of improving the maps and developing a thing called the challenge process. So if they are still claiming you had fiber and you aren't getting it, you've got a place to call. So go for that.
So we could go down this alleyway. We could go down this road. We could talk about how Starlink interacts with this. But let's get back on the IPv4 topic, because that's the one we haven't talked about before.
It's really difficult, obviously, to get there because you have
Yeah.
to first understand all these preconception things.
Sure.
So we ran out. They cost money now. There's a monopolistic, there is a large corporation currently providing internet services to much of the world, and they're now added this additional $1 billion a year fee to everybody. And hopefully this will help. People will migrate to IPv6, they will leave Amazon, but they're still going to make a small fortune off of renting what was previously free. Where I get really mad and upset and angry. Again, you've seen me lose my temper on your previous show, and I'm going to try to keep this.
I've also seen you sing, so it's okay.
Ow!
And play. I've actually heard you sing.
Yeah. Anyway, so
Your guitar is not far from you right now, am I correct?
it's I've got one in Nicaragua currently. I got one behind me. All I did today.
I don't mean to
is
totally
I brought my sticker today.
It kills Vogue.
Now I actually changed this because I was feeling mellow. I changed it to "This Machine Cures Vogons." I was feeling happy at the time. But still, IPv4. Okay, where we're going to do that. Anyway, so years and years ago, when we first laid this out, John Postel and Vint Cerf and so many people, they say, well, we had this enormous address space. Let's use it. Let's delegate portions of it. 0 was for configuration, because 0/8, 16 million addresses is from configuration. And then we'll allocate all these other addresses to all these other big organizations, Apple and IBM and big companies at the time. And the federal government has 11 of these /8s. They have about 70, I think it's 70 million addresses they're mostly not using today. And then we carved up another space on this thing called multicast was going to be the next big thing. And so they carved up 260 million addresses for multicast, figuring that that's how we were going to distribute voice and video. We were completely wrong. All we had understood at the time was classic broadcast television. So we thought we would use this multicast technology and reserve space for it to do broadcast television over the internet. Didn't work out that way. Do you know how many? Well, I'll tell you later. Anyway, and then at the very top of that range, because who could ever use up 1 billion addresses to connect the 300 computers that were on the internet, was the experimental address range. And that's another 260 million addresses that were reserved for future use. Okay? We didn't know what we would use them for, but we figured to just set them aside, and when we need them, we would use them. And then IPv6 started developing, and they say, well, we'll just keep going. And a bunch of agencies got put in charge, ICANN for names, Vogons for names, and what's called the RIRs for the numbers. And then we had IANA, which is a separate agency also in charge of the merger of these three. And I sometimes think that this was designed just like we designed the houses of Congress and the presidency, to make sure that they deadlock and can't accomplish anything good or bad or anything else at all. So, those on the show, look at what an RIR, Regional Internet Registry, is. We divvied up the world in 5 different regions. And then we started running out of IP addresses, and people looked at this other new range, saying, well, 260 million more addresses. That's 6% more internet. Let's do that. Now, the amount of code required to enable this address scheme is less than the code that is amount to not do it. Having the check to exclude this costs more CPU than just running it.
Yeah.
So in 2008, it mostly started working for everything, Apple, Linux, etc. We said, screw it, we'll just make that work eventually. But it got caught up in this bureaucratic infighting as to, who was going to distribute 260 million addresses. And it has been stuck there since 2008. I got involved in this around 2016, 17, when a friend of mine came to me, John Gilmore, and he said, it looks like we might need to have IPv4 running for like another 150 years.
Yeah.
And we're running out. What can we do about that? And I said, well, we can make this work. So I made it work. I also made 0/8 work, 16 million addresses. This is my all-time favorite and the most controversial patch I've ever done. Okay? I made 0/8, 16 million addresses, just work in Linux. It involved deleting 5 lines of code from the entire operating system. I scanned all the other software in the world to see what else checked for it and deleted it from there. And I was naive. I thought that the world would say, yes, thank you, 16 million more people can be online. And oh boy, the pitchforks and the torches came out for me.
You can't do that.
I was holding back the IPv6 distribution, and I'm like, I'm saving nanoseconds. So we did that, and then we went through the formal process. We put in IETF drafts to try to broaden it, and they were kicked down in flames by the IPv6 crowd. And meantime, there's all these people that really need IPv4 addresses that can't do anything, getting really frustrated.
Well, what happens to them is they get stuck behind CGNAT, carrier grade NAT, which is a pain and limits what you can actually do with the internet.
And the way we're going, we're going to have carrier grade NAT behind carrier grade NAT. And it hurts the connectivity. It means if you have a house, we see this all the time now. If you have your house here and you're on a CGNAT and you have another house next door and you're on a CGNAT, you have to go all the way back to their hosting provider and then come back to go 15 feet. And that's, I used to throw wires over to my neighbor, so we would play video games and stuff. The direct connectivity goes even further and further away to the middleman if you do CGNAT. So we're going to see a lot more CGNAT in the future, and it just seems inevitable that we will end up with more and more disconnectivity between things that should be close by. I mean, my cell phone, which does IPv6, should be able to talk to a tower there, and come off that tower and head a cable right back here, and it'd be much faster. Or it should easily connect via Wi-Fi to here, which is what it does today. Imagine if we didn't have Wi-Fi.
All of our cell phones would still have Ethernet ports on them, though, right?
Actually, and you have to wind them up by hand.
Yeah. So
that little tiny RJ45 sticking out the side.
So I've now managed to cover 30 years of history to finally get us to what's going on today and my contribution to the nightmare. So I made it work, and I tried to get through the bureaucratic processes. And we made it work so universally that Google and Amazon and a couple other big companies started using up these numbers internally. Now, as the author, I can't really claim copyright, I don't think. That was not my intent. You know, my intent was to make more addresses available for the world, 10% more internet. And instead, these companies, instead of doing an IPv6 transition, found a way of grabbing these numbers. Squatting is another word we can use, to help leverage, to make their operations easier and simpler, and without telling anybody. Hey, buddy, got an IP address? We're documenting how it works. I mean, some of their techniques could be used by everybody, and I'm okay with that. It's the failure to recognize reality and say, look, we have a civilization-wide problem here in trying to get our devices to communicate. And so I wanted very much to see these numbers get taken over by the regulatory authorities that are supposed to be doing them, distribute them to the newer small businesses, etc., that needed to get on the internet, and keep that part going. And maybe if enough people talk about it, there's a great article in the Register. Are you able to put a link in the chat? That came out recently with a new gang of folk that have discovered that, oh, damn, we're out of IP addresses. Here's 260 million. Let's go do that. And I'd hope Carl would make it to the show, because they have a different perspective on this stuff than I do. I just, as the original author of the patches, I'm like, okay, guys, come on, please work together. We were responsible for this internet together.
Right. So there's a process. I've been through the process to request IPv4 addresses. So like back in the past, there were blocks and blocks of them that were unused. And I thankfully got into this game early enough that I could just fill out some paperwork and say, hey, I'd like 16 IP addresses. And, it went through my, the ISP that I use at the data center. And they're like, sure, here's your addresses. And that's the way this is supposed to work. You've got these blocks of unused addresses. They've now started pushing businesses and organizations, hey, if you're not using addresses, give them back to us so that we can give them to the next people. And so there's this process that's supposed to work. And the 240.0.0.0 through the end of the internet, it's just it's never been handed over to that process. So are they, as far as Amazon and Google is concerned, are they considered non-routable addresses?
They are presently using it in their virtual router system. So yes, they're routable, but not to the internet.
But not publicly routable. So these guys are using this like a really, really big 192.168.0.0.
Yeah, the RFC 1918 is the actual specification for that. They ran out of 10 space. Amazon used up 16 million addresses, and they said, let's go do something else. Let's not squat on the CIA's numbers. Let's use these other numbers because they work. And again, they were in a bind. They were growing like weeds, and I'm okay that they. But not all 260 million. we reserve these things for future use, okay? Not for Jim Bezos' use.
Yeah.
This constitutes an enormous taking from the public sphere of what we could actually do to make the internet a little bit better as we crutch along to the IPv6 transition.
Right.
And it's all... Again, it's blowing up again at the RIR level, and for all I know, that responsible organizations will step up and say, "Hey, Jeff, could we have a couple of those? I got a buddy in Africa, really needs some. Hey, And at the
So
same
this is
go ahead.
written up where right now? I mean,
Oh, it's in the register.
okay.
I dropped a link to the show note. You can just search for
I see. Oh, I see it. I see it
like
now.
IPv4 block activism is the name of the link. So
Yeah.
Okay.
now I'm curious.
That's good.
Is Amazon actively talking to the RIRs saying, hey, it would be really great if those IP addresses did never get turned on? Is that a conversation that you think is happening?
Again, we're living in a world where 99 out of 100 people don't know what a packet is.
Right. But there are people at Amazon that do, though. Like the engineers at Amazon know what's going on. They know that they're using these IP addresses, and they know how much work. Like, okay, I'm not sure that I can comprehend in my mind the amount of engineering work that the guys at Amazon would have to do if the RIRs suddenly said, hey, we're going to start using these IP addresses. Amazon would have to renumber their entire cloud. That is mind-boggling.
But imagine asking the rest of the world to have to upgrade to IPv6 instead.
Well,
You know,
it is also a mind-boggling amount of work. It is ridiculous.
Yeah.
But this
So
gets back to this question, though. Do you think the people at Amazon in the know are then saying to your regional operators and to the big I forget the acronyms. I can't remember all the acronyms exactly, but Afrinic and RIPE and all of these guys, please don't start using 240/4, please.
Please? I don't think that conversation's happened. It's more like, we're Amazon, we're going to do whatever the hell we want. The RIRs are really small. I mean, for example...
So for those of us who have friends at Amazon,
Yeah.
I only have one, but I think he's been on the show. I'll leave that one nameless.
Yeah.
I'm not even specified gender, though it's not hard to guess. What do we say? I mean, as somebody who works for AWS, what do we say?
So I'm not even sure again, I'm trying to raise awareness of this stuff. For example, I know several people at Amazon that are deeply bitter that they didn't make the investment into IPv6. They had a good architecture for it, and they are working towards making IPv6 work. They have to eventually. And they feel some of the same guilt that I'd hope more people feel about the initial shared spirit of the internet. So if I didn't have people on the inside that didn't feel bad about it, I would be truly angry. But I'm sure Jeff Bezos doesn't know, or
He's not involved anymore, so it's a guy whose name we all forget or never knew.
Yeah, so there's a point here. I can't remember if we were talking during the show or during the pre-show, but this idea about people in government don't understand what a packet is. And like almost nobody at the upper levels of government in the United States, at least, like you talk senators and congressmen, there's maybe a dozen of them altogether, and that is probably being very generous, that have a clue about like how the internet works, what a packet is, what things like net neutrality actually means. And I think at businesses, I know this because I work with small businesses, you have the same thing. The people at the top that tend to make the decisions don't actually understand the technology. And so there's this constant tension, we'll say, between your engineering people who have very strong opinions about things and your management and upper management that also have very strong opinions about things, but they're coming at these issues from two totally different perspectives. And it's fascinating to see how that conflict plays out in the way the business gets run and how that impacts things like this 240 block.
Yeah. Well said. I got an analogy, though, I hope will work on more governments, or more politicians. If you don't have a physical address for the voter, you can't send them campaign literature.
Oh.
Every device needs a virtual address in order for you to be able to send it spam and campaign literature.
Oh, great.
It's a little cynical.
Just a little.
It's horrifying.
Go ahead, Doc.
I just said it's horrifying. That there's no place to go with that. So,
I saw something, I think it was on Reddit. Somebody asked, why don't we just use MAC addresses instead of IP addresses?
That's a really profound question, actually. It almost
It is-
happened.
It is an interesting question. I think it would be a routing nightmare, but it
No.
is an interesting question.
well, it's
Believe it or not, it wouldn't have been. Honestly,
well,
there was an
interesting, 'cause,
actual.
I mean, I always saw
Okay.
an IP address as the abstract layer on top of a MAC address,
Yeah.
and then domain name, or another abstraction through another different administrative system, but a different set of conventions. But I mean, so what's Amazon? I mean, so they're squatting on these. They could give some of them to the Africanic or whatever, Afrinic or whatever it is.
The
or
5
loan
RIRs.
them.
Well, they could give them back. They weren't theirs in the first place.
Okay.
But I would not have a
Well, I was
problem
trying to
with the
read this
transitional
article. It
phase.
says, I read here some ham radio operators sold it to them.
Okay, that's a different thing that happened. This is a good counterexample.
Okay, different. I made the mistake of trying to listen to you and read the thing at the same time.
Okay, this is a good counterexample. So John Postel was approached in 1988 or so by some ham radio geeks, and they asked him, "Hey, it'd be really cool if ham radio could do the internet thing." And he said, "Sure. Here's 44/8. Go ahead, have at it." Kind of foolish in retrospect. So whoever ended up controlling that address was suddenly sitting on $50 per IP. 16 million times $50 is
A lot of money.
okay.
Like $900 million.
A ridiculous amount of I can't do the math, and it was cheaper then. Anyway, that group of people that ended up sort of accidentally on a handshake agreement with John.
Yeah.
Decided finally that they weren't using most of that, and they sold off a block of it to Amazon. I forget what the numbers are. They're published somewhere, but they pocketed well over $100 million. They formed a nonprofit, and as ARDC, they are going out and funding wonderful ham radio projects. If there's anyone on the show that wants to be a ham, go to ARDC and apply for a grant. And they've managed to use that accidental allocation for good. And very happy with what happened in that case. And this could happen all over the world. Apple could say, "Hey, Africa, we're not using part of our allocation. We'll let you have that." We can manage to squeeze more space out of the IPv4 internet if we figure out a way of cooperating. And it'd be awesome if Amazon could work that way too. Here's another example. I'd like IPv6 to take off. And you know how Apple has a walled garden, right? Mm-hmm. In that walled garden, they mandate IPv6 supporters on all their devices.
Yeah.
So, and Amazon could do that. A Tencent could do that, and we would manage to get rid of this immediate crisis of artificial scarcity.
Yeah.
Now, is anyone there as enlightened as I am? There's a lot of ideas.
Not anywhere, Dave. That's sorry.
So, okay, I'm curious if you have a feel for this. There's a lot of these blocks of IPv4 addresses that are dark. They've been assigned or they're not used for various reasons. Do you have an idea of what percentage of IPv4 of the entire space is actually being used?
That isn't a good number, and I don't have it on me. I'll argue that probably 20% of it is not being used today, and that is exclusive of the U.S. government holdings. It may be lower than that, closer to 12. Don't quote me. Somebody researched it on the show. For example, Eric Raymond has been holding on to two 2/24s, 512 addresses for the last 30 years. Because someday he wanted to use them for something.
Sure.
And it's really hard to get them routed. And this is funny, I guess. We did a deal years ago. I agreed to pay him $2 a year to rent them from him. $2 bills. And under the condition I give them back in 2038. After they've accrued more value. I'm not sure if Doc will get the joke. It looks like you did, Jonathan.
No, I didn't.
That's when Unix time breaks.
Oh, of course. Okay, gotcha.
John, and so the bet I made with Eric is that in order to keep him incentivized, he works on NTP, and so if the time if that works, and we survive the Holocaust of the time rolling over, he gets his IP addresses back.
Okay, that's good.
$2 a year is a great little bet.
Yeah.
I hope to use those addresses up someday in some worthy cause, and that might include using something to route like 240 or portions of it. I don't know. But it's one of the funnier investments I've made in the IP address market.
That's fun.
Thank you, Eric, for being on the joke.
That's great. So I want to get back to this question because you kind of blew my mind by suggesting it was possible, and that is just using MAC addresses instead of IPv4. And the reason I think this is so crazy is because I know on a local network, the way that you handle MAC addresses, this MAC address to IP, is you've got a table in each of your switches that just has memorized, okay, this MAC address is down this port. And your network kind of loses its mind when you run out of spaces in that table. And when you do the math about how many possible MAC addresses there are, let's just say you need a really, really, really big table.
Yeah, it's true. So I was going back in history, let me get my walker so I can take you a trip back. But there was DECnet, there was IPX, there was CLNA, there was a bunch of other potential standards. Mm-hmm. And IP predated Ethernet. The MAC address idea blew people's minds. It was a brilliant idea, but it wasn't hierarchical. And in order to be able to route, you need to be able to say, you 200 boxes are here, and route. So yes, if you were to use MAC addresses to route over the internet, you're screwed. However, if you prefix, CLNA tried to prefix a whole bunch of bytes in front of that to provide the routing functionality back in. It was a competitor to IPv6, and it would have worked, and it might have worked better than IPv6. And instead, we ended up with this somewhat crazy scheme that became IPv6, which. Again, is a hierarchical routing system. We take that enormous MAC address, we hash it together, but the prefix you get is stable and hierarchical, and that's the scaling factor. So, the 2.0, whatever you all are there, that's a pretty small number that only requires, I think the current IPv6 routing table is less than 100,000 entries. It's doable and it runs the whole internet. The IPv4 routing table is almost a million entries now. And it has to be searched really fast on every single packet. There's a thing called a CAM memory. It's required. You have this incredibly weird circuit. And, it worked and scaled. And here we are today talking over all these different things. And up until now, no one listening cared about all this machinery managing to make our cat videos fly. We have big things in the future ahead of us. We need to get out into orbit, beyond low Earth orbit. This is a little, again, I don't mind getting off this topic now, but
that's fine.
Have you seen the designs for the communication systems between here and the moon in the last decade?
I have not looked, but I'm very curious about them, particularly when we go further than the moon. Something I've been curious about for a long time is how do you make the internet work between here and Mars? Like, everything we've ever done on the internet breaks down when you have a round trip time that's that long.
Yeah, it does.
It's just 2 seconds to the moon, but it's like 17 minutes to Mars, I think, something like that. Well, it depends. The eccentric orbit,
So we don't know. We do know how to make it work between here and the moon, thanks to all the Bufferblut research.
Oh, good.
Sounds about
That
right.
makes sense.
Yeah, but not between here and Mars. There was a lot of books. There was a couple books that came out in 1993 that predicted all this stuff, and Snow Crash gets way too much credit. And it was a dystopia. More people should read about it. Read it in that light. There was a wonderful book by Werner Vinge that leveraged the concept of Usenet and broadcast transmissions to describe a intergalactic civilization. Yeah. So what works better for communications between here and Mars is to just basically broadcast everything all the time and keep it around and index it. So conversations will be difficult, but emails will get there in 17 minutes, and a copy of Wikipedia will always be present,
Sure.
and so on. So that book's called A Fire Upon the Deep. It's very influential on me because it describes a race of alien beings that communicated through sound. to each other. In order to be smarter, they would gather together in clusters of four or five individuals and communicate via sounds with their ears together. And they're cool, really cool characters. I hope someday they make a movie. And then they discovered radio. Instead of having to cluster together in groups of 4 and 5, they could put on the radio headphones and still communicate hundreds of miles away from each other. Hugely influential on me. And so Fire Upon the Deep is my book recommendation. And maybe I should turn it over to you. Have you guys read anything good lately besides tweeters?
Anything good? Yeah,
Yeah.
I can say something good.
Sure, good.
You want to hear it? Okay, so the IEEE standards, there's an IEEE standard called P7012. It's not a standard yet. We're working on it. I'm the chair of the working group. It's for machine-readable personal privacy terms. It's completely reverse the way contracts work online now, which is where you're always assenting to somebody else's thing. They agree to ours, and we can scale it. We can make it fun. David Reed was our first chair.
Oh, cool. David Reed of Boulder or David Reed of
David Reed of the End-to-End Argument and Systems Design, who with Seltzer and Clark wrote that, which informed TCP/IP, who helped write UDP as well. A great guy. He ran out of patience with it, and two chairs later, I'm the chair. But we're drafting this, and it's we're fairly close. We have a number of different approaches, but we could frame it up pretty well. I think it's going to be good.
I would so love to be able to offer my contract to humanity or my contract to the corporation.
Yeah, well, it's going to be like Creative Commons. It's going to be. There's a set of contracts that are, business friendly enough so that they could easily be agreed to. Like we have one already that just doesn't have a machine readable form yet, called No Stalking, which says go ahead and show me ads. Just make sure they're not based on tracking me. A variety of that would be okay. Track me on your site, but nowhere else.
But nobody, I think, is really, well, I would think nobody here is willing to say, okay, track me. At least I'm not. By the way, I recently had my Luddite moment. I got a new phone. And instead of reloading my Signal, Telegram, Matrix, IRC, Zulip, I forget, Facebook, how many other chat programs, like 10 different chat applications, I said, screw it. And I went back to MMS. First benefit, my battery life went to 7 days. I also haven't had a bill for my bandwidth since I did this. So I managed to cut my bill to something reasonable. And the silent, wow, I'm outside walking around and I can think again.
You're not just a rectangle anymore.
Escaping the rectangle.
Escape the rectangle.
Maybe we should have an escape the rectangle day.
Yeah.
Yeah. Leave your cell phones behind. Go out and promise you'll meet someone new. Make some music. Read a book. Do the things your parents used to do.
So it's funny. You asked for a book recommendation. What immediately came to my mind is I don't read books anymore. I listen to them. That's just what has started to work.
What people do.
And
it cuts into your podcast consumption. Watch out.
Honestly, I don't do hardly any podcasts. I don't listen to hardly any podcasts. I know I'm terrible for saying that.
No, you're not.
But it's just the way it is. But my book reading, I tend to do with Audible anymore, and it's fascinating because I used to, take so many physical books and read them. And goodness, I've got a full wall here in the office that is physical books. I don't think I've picked one of them up to read one for months, and it's just fascinating the way that things change.
It's a good weight loss program. I mean, it's you can just keep doing that. I was going to bring this one up. So I'm staying at my mom's place. My father passed years ago.
Oh, Bob Woodward's.
And the cool thing about what my parents did to me is they didn't let me watch television, and they stuck me in his office library. So there I am reading books like this at the age of 8 and asking my dad's questions. So I can try to get this thing to work. There I am, like. Anyway, so what was cool about that he had a lot of controversial books, and I read them when I was a kid. I did not necessarily understand them. So I've been here for a few months, and I've been rereading stuff that I thought I understood then. And I think it really pays to reflect and have that memory of what happened before, and in some substance that isn't on the internet. So I won't do a live reading today, but perhaps I like the Audible idea a lot. I would love to hear dramatizations and stuff. I've never really done that. So
Yeah. There's an interesting little quirk with that. Audible uses DRM. And so legally, you can't download. Now, there's ways to do it. I'm not going to tell you how on the show, but legally, you can't download and keep your Audible purchases offline. And so there's this whole other question, and this is why I still have paper books. What happens when either Audible, Amazon decides they don't want to do Audible anymore, or Audible decides that this author that you like is no longer acceptable?
Persona non grata, yeah.
Is a persona non grata and starts deleting their works. And so, in fact, I was smiling just a moment ago because my son listens to the show and he says, you know what that means? He doesn't need all those books anymore. It's like, no. There's a reason that we have the books. You cannot persona non grata any of these authors because I still have a copy of their book. Whether I agree with what it says or not, whether I think it's a good person or not, their words are recorded forever in the form of that book. And I think it's a really dangerous thing that we've come to the point to where, for any reason at all, we think that people's thoughts should be inaccessible, and that worries me. That we're coming to that point as a society where you disagree with someone, you think someone's a bad person, that's fine, but to say that their thoughts should be inaccessible, I don't know. I think that's a bridge.
Don't say I don't know. Defend that. No, we have a right to. Look. What was the name of the guy that discovered gravity?
I think Isaac Newton is the one normally credited with that.
Yeah.
I'm going to use a bad word. Newton was a dick. He was a reprehensible person. He really was. And if we'd canceled him, we wouldn't know about gravity.
Yeah, it's
there's a lot of people that
pretty much everybody in history is now unacceptable. I mean, if they're around now.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I want us to I want us to continue as we move forward to dare to be unacceptable and dare to be crotchety and dare to say what we thought. And
there's another show title.
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing about Newton, you bring him up, they tried to cancel him during his lifetime. Right?
Yes,
the powers that be at the time tried to cancel Newton because he dared to suggest that the sun did not revolve around the earth. Now, some of the nuanced details of this.
That was Galileo too. Sorry.
Galileo.
Okay, so yes, Galileo.
You can read that about that in the book.
Yeah. But the point remains, though, that you have some of these scientific discoveries that people at the time tried to squash, and so there's kind of a lesson there of, be real careful about the ideas that you try to squash because you don't know what those ideals will turn into in the future.
Yeah. And kids today.
Yeah, kids today. So. Get off my lawn. All right. Well, I think we've filled up about an hour.
It's great to see you guys again.
It was good to have you. I enjoy shows like this. It's a little less structured and more just chewing the fat. Is there anything, David, that we didn't cover that you wanted to make sure and let folks know about?
Oh, okay. Get a 1 minute project pitch. Pitch. Go ahead, though. Go ahead, Doc.
Okay, here's a question. When will we have too many satellites doing what Starlink already does?
The day we have a Kessler event.
A Kessler event being.
That's the day we'll have.
That's when one satellite blows up, sprays debris into orbit, and you have a chain reaction.
Oh, okay, and that we can never pick out of orbit, like Milsat 3 blew up. That's another one that's huge, millions of pieces of debris.
It's a serious, a meteoroid or a Kessler event or an atomic war will render the low Earth orbit unusable for about at least 5 years.
Yeah, that's the thing people kind of leave out of the conversation about Kessler event. If you're talking about low Earth orbit, all of that debris will decay fairly quickly. Satellites only stay in orbit because they've got ion thrusters that keep them there.
Yeah.
When you're talking about low Earth orbit. So.
But if it happens, then humanity is critically dependent on that kind of technology. We don't
That's
have
true.
other backups.
That'll be a tough 5 years.
Well, I mean, like, all the kids today, they don't know how to get home without GPS. I have given a lot of, in my Luddite mode, I'll give talks to explaining people how to find your way home when your battery dies in your cell phone, and how to find the Southern Cross and the North Star. And it's news to people as to how to get around anymore without that kind of stuff. It'd be a really dark day if we get so critically dependent on that technology and it suddenly goes away. Anyway, you asked me for a 1 minute project plug. 1, look to the stars. 2, I wanted to recommend a wonderful movie I did see recently, Twilight Zone, which I saw as a kid. Had one called Bookworm Rejoice with Burgess Meredith in it, and it's about a bookworm that survives nuclear war and gets a chance to read.
Yeah.
Just read.
Time enough at last.
Remember what happened at the end?
I'm not going to say. It's a
Okay,
mystery
don't
for
say.
the audience to explore.
It's important, and a weird thing about, and that's how old we are, man. I remember the first time I saw Twilight Zone. It was, I forget the name of the famous actor, but he was a prisoner who was on a prison planet. He was the only occupant there, and they gave him a female robot as a companion. And then when he could leave, he could only take 5 pounds with him or something like that. And they had to leave the robot there. And he was in love with the robot. And so they shot her in the face. And his name was Corey. And he went, Corey. So they're amazing short stories, though. Really
it's still
good.
almost as fresh and as interesting and as intriguing as now as it is today. They predicted the various futures, that some of which have happened. And I've been catching that recently. That's been my current addiction. So anyway, you asked me for a 1 minute plug. My day job these days is a thing called Libre QoS. And I'm known for fixing the buffer bloat problem with algorithms like FQCoddle and Cake. And they're pretty ubiquitous now. But they require that you update your hardware, your router hardware, to the latest and greatest stuff. And the right place to do that was really in your router hardware. You should be updating and get this thing called IPv6 too. But we developed a box for open source software that the ISP can do, and they just plug it into the switch. And overnight, if you have 10,000 subscribers, their internet gets massively, massively better. And so for many years, I've been encouraging the geek community to go out and fix your own bloody routers and do that. And now I want the geek community to go yell at your ISP to go install this free software to make it better for your neighbors that don't even know what a packet is. And that would make a much better internet for everybody. We're in our 4th release, and we've got well over 1 million people using it today. I'm very proud of the team, Herbert and Frank, and oh man, I'm forgetting the CEO's name. Forget you, man. Anyway, and Robert. Forgive me, Robert. And together we are going to make a much better internet for everybody on the cheap if more people go out and ask their ISP to do it. So that's my plug, ad for the day. Thanks for having me on.
I've got to ask you before we go, and I know we've asked you this before, but I will get emails if I don't. Scripting language and text editor. Have they changed? What do you use?
I could start making jokes on this one again. Now, Rust has become my scripting language.
Ah, cool.
I'm kidding. I can't understand Rust at all.
I had a conversation with somebody, one of our other Hackaday writers, just the other day. We were talking about languages. It's going to be a problem. I think we were talking about Rust and Linux kernel. And it's going to be a problem because you have so many of these Linux developers that don't know how to read Rust. And I started to type. I'm like, oh, you understand how to read one language. You understand how to read them all. It can't be that bad. And I'm like, I better go check on this before I say this. And I went to the Rust replacement core utils, which is a cool project. But I went to their source code and Rust can't be that hard. And it's like, I have no idea what any of this code does. This is the hardest thing I've ever seen to try to read. I don't even know, it was crazy. Like if let sum equals, I'm like, why do you have a let in an if statement. I don't get this at all. So yes, Rust is hard to read.
Yeah, well, my project is being done in Rust. Herbert is a trainer on that too, so let me plug him, Herbert Wolverson, for Arden Labs, and he's been doing a great job with it. There are three really, as an old programmer, there are three really amazing things about Rust. For starters, it's upside down and backwards from what C is, so that's part of the unnatural thing.
Right.
And you thought Perl line noise was bad, you got that problem too. But the beauty of it, and it took me 2 months of intensive study to get it, is this thing called the borrow checker. And with that, you're able to write highly concurrent and parallel programs that scale across multiple cores with utterly first-rate algorithms. It is the first thing that will let you think in parallel and code in parallel without crashing all the time.
Oh, cool.
So I've become a believer by osmosis at the kinds of incredibly fast code you can do in user space anyway by doing Rust and hanging out with the master.
Yeah.
That said, in my job, I do a little SQL, and Herbert, help! I've met my match in Rust. Rust is for the younger generation. And similarly, he relies on all kinds of great things like ChatGPT and stuff to do templating, and I still live in Emacs, and I tried to add ChatGPT, etc., to Emacs, and pencil and paper is probably my favorite text editor now. And sooner or later, I'll be carving stuff on stone tablets or clay tablets because it'll last longer than these stupid books will. Yes, glad I could answer that question for you. I'm very, very impressed with the borrow checker. It really is a breakthrough.
Yeah, that's cool. So. Rust is definitely on my to-do list to go and learn a little bit more about it and actually write some code.
Yeah, honestly, set aside 2 weeks, throw away everything you already knew. The hard part for me was I grew up on stacks, and registers and assembly language and heap, and those abstractions, you have to stop caring entirely about that and think about sharing. And how your data interrelates with each other. Just stop caring about how this architecture works and share. And I'm pretty sure that if I was a little younger and I had more time, I would be embracing the language as fully as so many are today. Yeah. We're seeing 10, 20, 30 levels of performance improvement by people rewriting shit in Rust.
Yeah.
I finally screwed up your...
I'll bleep it out. It's fine. All right. David, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for coming on last minute. We had our previous guest that was scheduled had a bit of a medical emergency come up and is somewhere in the process of trying to get surgery done right now. So we'll have him. We will have him again, hopefully in a few weeks. We've got him rescheduled. But David, it was great to have you.
Thank you. Okay, one last thing though. Happy Valentine's Day, everybody.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Get off the internet and spend some time with someone you love.
Unfortunately, the rest of my day is going to be spent doing the production on the rest of this show. But maybe a little bit of time tonight. We'll see.
Okay. Great to see you guys, too. Miss you.
Yep. Thank you, man.
Miss you, Doc. Keep on rocking it.
All right. So, Doc, what do you think? It's always a lot of fun to talk to David.
It's always great to talk to David. I'm glad I brought him up. So you could bring him in.
Yes.
Because as I said in our back channel, Dave is an artesian well of good information and advice and commitment and all kinds of other good things we need from the people we depend on to make the internet work. I actually, that famous cartoon that the XKCD Randall Munroe cartoon of the whole internet is maintained by one guy in Nebraska, right?
Yes.
Dave's the kind of that guy. He's one of those people. I think it's more like, the internet is this complicated thing that can be improved in lots of ways, and he's all about improving it all the time. And we all depend on it, and it's a largely thankless thing for them, but he has to do it. So he doesn't have much choice about it. He can't help it. Yeah.
Yes. You know, that comic is funny because I think there's actually about a dozen, maybe 24 of those one guys, right? Because you've got projects like NTP, which for the longest time was literally just one guy. But there's even more obscure things that we all rely on than NTP. Because NTP you can kind of see from time to time. But there's things like the term info file. Like how many people know what that is? But if that suddenly breaks, we are all in trouble. And there's some of these really obscure things that everybody uses. There's one guy, or sometimes what the really scary one is where it's still there and it's still being used, but there's not a guy that's maintaining it. It's just kind of a zombie project. Those are the ones that really worry me.
Yeah.
All right. Let me get this in. Next week, we are talking with S. Falcon, and I do not remember what his first name is, and I just have it in there as S. But he is, I met him through the Fedora Matrix, and he does a lot of things, but one of the interesting ones, Cloverleaf Linux, a Linux maintainer, does a bunch of different Linux distros and Linux fun things. Talking with him next week. And then the week after that, on February 28th, we're going to be 2 hours early, and we're going to talk with Eben Upton of Raspberry Pi, and that one is going to be a lot of fun. There's been some pretty big news about the Raspberry Pi, not the foundation, but the corporation. They're looking at going public, and we're going to talk with him about that. We're going to talk with him about the Raspberry Pi 5. Hopefully, we're going to talk about an upcoming Raspberry Pi 500. I don't have any inside information about this, but I'm going to beg him to make the Pi 500 and put an NVMe slot in it. It would be amazing. Anyway, that's what's coming up for the show. Doc, do you have anything you want to plug?
Yeah, actually, so some people, I'm sure, listening or watching, may be at Scale next month in Pasadena. I will actually be there for the first time.
Cool.
And I will be there to speak at something that the Kwai people are putting on. That's KWAAI.ai. Mm-hmm. They're a collective of characters that want us all to have our own damned AI.
Yes.
And I'm all for that. I've been for that. That's why they want me out there. So I'm gonna fly out there as cheaply as I can, meaning it's partly on Spirit, the airline, not the not the
yes.
not the ghost. Anyway, so wish me luck on that. I hope they succeed. Anyway, so but I'll be there. So if anybody wants to see me or just feels like seeing another old man somewhere, I'll probably be the oldest guy there, as I always am. But anyway, that's a Scale next month.
Yeah,
so I'll be there.
Snag somebody while you're there from Kauai, because that looks cool to have on the show.
Yeah. I know. Yeah, I am going to pitch him on going on the show. I'll just
sounds great.
Yeah,
all right.
That so they're cool people.
There you go.
Yeah. And you can join it. I mean, it's just an open collective.
All right. Well, thank you, sir, for coming in. Kind of last minute. Yeah. Both of our co-hosts and our guests were both kind of last minute. I sure appreciate it. All right. If you want to follow my work, the best place to do it is Hackaday, hackaday.com. We've got the security column goes live every Friday. And then there's also the Untitled Linux Show. That's still over at Twit, and we sure have a lot of fun doing that. That is, for now, a Club Twit exclusive, and we record that Saturday afternoons over in the Twit Discord. So anybody that wants to, you can join Club Twit and come check us out there. Thank you, everyone that caught it live. Thank you, everyone on the download. We appreciate all of our listeners. If there's a project that you want to see on the show, let us know. Either drop us a note in Discord, or you can email us, floss@hackaday.com, and that'll come right to me. And we will, if we can get a hold of somebody, we'll get it scheduled and talk to whatever project it is you guys want to hear about. Thank you so much, and we will see you next time on Floss Weekly.